Hey, research people. I hope you are well out there. And it sort of occurred to me that I hadn't sent you guys a sort of, or at least collectively, sent you guys a video or anything in some time. So we're actually in week 10, which is kind of hard to believe, but seemed like a pretty good time to sort of reach out collectively and try to take stock of where we're at, what we're doing. And to speak to a couple of important things having to do with the papers, having to do with the presentations, some of that hopefully to clarify kind of where we're at and where we're going here. And I'm just noticing, in case you're wondering in the background, that actually is it's a baby with a lightsaber. So didn't notice that before. The word you're looking for, I think, is professionalism. Anyway, speaking of picking words, I feel like the word this entire year for all of us in just about every facet of our lives has been adaptation, where we've all been sort of just scrambling to keep ourselves afloat with our lives, with our jobs, with our classes, with our everything. So I've been very aware of that, and as I've mentioned other times, particularly in classes like this, I feel like I've been working pretty darn closely with most of you, more like in a one-to-one individual basis, and in particular, I say it every time, but going into the end of the course like this and trying to wrap everything up, put a bow on it. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there are things I can help with in that regard. A lot of you right now are working with me on your analyses and getting some of those things put together, which I'm happy to do. But the same goes for any of the rest of it as well. So don't be bashful if you need things. And as I'm saying with the adaptation component of this, it's been a unique year for all of us, and trying to be trying to adapt in my own regard, trying to accommodate everything as best I can. It's been a juggling act, but it has put us in a position where, sort of as a class, there's a lot of disparity between kind of where people are at, where they're focused, what they have done, what they still need to do, which is all right. It's a little more simple if it's uniform, but nothing is uniform in our world right now. So with that, the first thing I actually wanted to come on to that is probably one of the more important. Well, let me backtrack for 1 second as I lead into that and say you surely got the announcement email that went out for this week, which, like other weeks, I completely forgot to get to before it got sent out, which surprises no one at this point, especially me. But you probably know that not only the dates that were included in that message are incorrect, but the main topic had to do with as you are getting the final draft of the entirety of your paper. So, taking that introduction section, taking the methods, taking the results, taking all of it, and starting to attach a discussion to it and really get towards that final product. The thing that we're supposed to be moving into this week then is to be doing peer review for one another. So, as the email reads and as the instructions read as you go into the modules, the way this is typically set up for a typical term would have been that I would have been grouping you within Canvas such that I would have taken so and so and so and so. I would have linked you up in Canvas. You would have swapped papers and provided peer feedback to one another. If you've gone in and looked at that, you've seen that I haven't grouped you in there. And that's specifically because of this unique situation that we're in. Unfortunately, as I say, people are at such different places with their projects, with their papers, with those kinds of things that it's functionally not possible to go in and link you up in that fashion at the moment. And so I've been sort of pondering this with my coffee this morning, trying to figure out what the most logical and ideally the most simple solution is going to be to that. And the best I can come up with at the moment, and I think it will work just fine. It's not the most elegant thing in the world, but my thought being, some of you are at the point where you do have a complete paper put together. You're more or less like set to go. You're tweaking, you're polishing, you're doing that kind of a thing. If that's where you're at, that is fantastic and that is excellent. If you've got a full draft that you are ready to put in, mind you, I don't mean final draft, as in this goes graded, but I just mean a draft of the total of your paper. It does not have to be pretty. And as I've said in the past, they generally aren't. It takes a lot of iterations to work through those. But if you've got a paper and it is at a place where you would be ready for peers to start giving you feedback and for you to start giving them feedback, here's what I'm proposing. Email that paper directly to me and just indicate in your message, hey, this is my draft. I'm ready to have somebody look at it. I'm going to have you all listed out, and I've got a sense kind of where everybody is. So say you have yours, you send it to me and say, great, I'm ready. I want feedback on this, please. Awesome. I'm going to take that, I'm going to stick it in a file. The next paper I get from the next person who says, yes, I'm also ready, I'm going to pair you. So I will take your papers, I'll email the both of you, I'll send the copies to you, I'll link you up. We can basically keep an open line of communication just via email rather than having it be through Canvas. And that way it's a inelegant but operational way for us to sort of take where people are at, who's ready when, and link them up in a way that ideally is still going to provide a good amount of feedback, and you're working with somebody who's at that same place. You're not stuck still trying to do your analysis and even make sense of the findings of yours while somebody else is like ready to submit the totality of their work and that sort of thing. So that's my proposal, and I'm hoping everybody sees this video. I'm going to go in shortly after this to Canvas, to the pages within the module that would be towards the peer review that have the old instructions about the groupings and that kind of thing. And I will put a notice within there as well about how we've changed this up and what we're doing. And hopefully this will disseminate. Everybody will get the message and we'll be able to march forward reasonably simple. I hope that's the plan. Where was I going to go from there? I think that's all I really have about that component. For those of you, again, I don't mean to be broken record-ish, but different things are trickling in at different paces. So most of you, I think everybody who had their introduction in should have their introduction with my edits back. Methods, I finally got, I think, all the method sections that I had sent back to folks. The analyses piece, the data, I'm working with most of you on that. So if you are curious about that, if I've overlooked something, which is entirely possible at this point, just holler, let me know, and I will try to get that taken care of as quickly as possible for you. The other big piece. So in addition to your final draft of the paper, there's a presentation, and I've had a couple of emails sort of asking questions about that. And so I thought that would be something that would be worth talking about here. Hopefully you've seen in the module, in the final module, in the last bit, there's a little bit about the presentations. There's a few examples of presentations from the past, kind of what they look like, kind of gives you a template and a sense of what those things are to look like. In essence, you say presentation, it sounds involved. It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like something that's really worth stressing over and not getting quality sleep, which is kind of, well, we always find reasons for that. It's not that at all. The hard work is done. This presentation really ought to be a very straightforward process. This presentation is roughly the equivalent of what you would be doing if you were giving a talk at a conference or something like that. You've done your project now. You started off with sort of the idea. You did the literature review. You built together a literature review, an introduction, a sort of background, and a rationale that built towards your project. Then, of course, you move into, this is what, based on this, we hypothesize this is how we're going to do it, about all that. That's all this presentation is meant to be, just in the form of slides. So really it's your total project kind of just bulleted out. It doesn't have to be written out in long, extensive writing, nothing of the sort. It's going to be about 15 or more slides total, which sounds like a lot, but realistically, take the paper that you have to adequately try to cover the big ideas, the big topics, the big work that's been done within the field that you're interested in, that you're working on. You're going to need several slides to kind of bullet that out. What are the terms that you have been using? How are they defined? How have they been used? What has the previous research shown? What methods have they used to obtain those results, to make the claims that they're making, that you're now basing your ideas off of? Right there, just going through some of the previous research, laying out the justification, that's going to be several slides. And then, of course, you're going to move into, here's what I then hypothesized. Then you go into your methods section. How do we go about it? A page for your participants and that whole explanation. Some of this can be genuinely, for particularly like methods sections, you can pretty well just cut and paste most of those into your PowerPoint slide right out of your paper. When you get into some of the bigger sections, procedures, for instance, one of the things that I found myself sending as feedback to most everybody in the methods section was you got to expand a bit on the procedures. It's hard to do. It's mind numbing. It is painful to go through, but it's one of those where it's too easy for us who have been living, eating, breathing, sleeping this project now for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, to write out something that's the procedures and read it and be like, yeah, that's pretty much how that went down. The idea, of course, though, is you've got to be able to write it out such that you could hand that procedural section to a complete stranger, somebody who knows nothing about you, nothing about your project, nothing about the area that you're even studying, but that they could take that procedures section and basically perform the trials of your experiment or your study based on that description. And that gets to a level of sort of painstaking detail that's hard to get outside of our own perspective. It's hard to remove yourself enough and have this sort of objective perspective of what it would be like for another person to read it. And I hope that particularly like when we do this peer review piece, you send me the papers, I'll match you up, we'll send them out, that kind of thing. You get a different set of eyeballs, you get a different brain interpreting that stuff, and hopefully that'll be helpful. But the point, to finally come back to my original point about that, so you're probably not going to cut paste procedures into a PowerPoint slide, because that's not what a PowerPoint's about. You don't want to sit there and read paragraphs on a sheet. So just bullet it out, the basics. Here's what it was, here's what it did, here's how they accessed it, all of that. Results section. This should be a slide for itself. Depending, some of you have done multiple analyses, have different findings. You're more than welcome to sort of spread those out, place those onto slides that speak to the individual outcomes or particularly important topics that you want to make sure that the consumer is going to understand. And then the discussion, which is where you then expand back into, okay, you have all this background now. I told you about all this work done. I told you why I was doing what I was doing. I told you what I did, with whom, how I measured it, what I found, what the results said. And the discussion then basically lays it out. So here's what this means, right? Here's what this means or what this doesn't mean. Here's what went well. Here's what didn't go so well. Here's how it does fit with what I presented in the introduction. Here's what's not necessarily congruent in that case. It's very free form. It's very much up to you. But those are typical ways that you would take something like the discussion, put it into context, acknowledge the strengths, the weaknesses, think about how you would do things differently, speak to potential future research, those kinds of things. And at that point, you probably got 15 or more PowerPoint slides, and that's all that presentation is. It's a skeletal presentation of the project that you know and love / probably hate at this point. You know it well, so it shouldn't be too overwhelming to put that together. But as always, if it's not clear, if you do have questions, if you want more examples or something that's different from the examples that are within Canvas, that kind of thing, let me know, and I'll see what I can get put together for you, and we'll get it figured out. So with that, I've been rambling for I don't know how long enough now. Good, the baby's still there. Whew, scary. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll continue to be in touch. I'm still, as I said, working with a number of you, so I'll be touching base individually, but I'll try to also do some more of this sort of collective, bringing us all together as we move into the end of things now. So keep up the good work. We are almost there. Take that as sort of the takeaway, rather than like it's, oh my god, this is stressful. You've worked really hard. You've done this entire project. This is the time when it's all going to be coming together. You get to see the fruits of your labor, and it's going to be good. So take care of yourselves, and we will be in touch soon. All right, take care.